Welcome back to Season 3 of Driving Performance. I'm your co-host, Tom Shea, the co-founder and CEO of Agile.
I'm your other co-host, Max Flannery. I'm the co-founder and president of Agile.
I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Andrew Maxman. Andrew is the principal at Imaginary Ventures, a New York-based venture capital firm renowned for its investing in some of the most game-changing consumer brands of the last decade. Imaginary's portfolio reads like a who's who of modern retail. You got Glossier, SKIMS, Reformation, Bureau, Mila, The Row, Bathhouse, Lucky Energy, Kosas, and so many other ones. In his role, Andrew leads venture and growth equity investments, focusing on opportunities at the intersection of retail and technology. Andrew, welcome to Season 3 of Driving Performance.
Thank you guys very much for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on.
Yeah.
So I like to ask the same question of every guest at the beginning. For the audio-only listeners, how would you describe what is happening right now?
Oh, it's incredible. We're sitting in a glass box on the back of a parked truck. Does this drive, by the way?
It does.
Because it's kind of like parking performance more so than driving performance.
All right, get the hell out! Get the hell out of here!
We're parked on the corner of 13th and University. The passers-by are for sure really curious, and I don't know what's about to happen in the next hour, but the last 5 minutes have been quite eventful.
All right, well, let me introduce the format of the podcast. As we are in a truck, the theme is we have a few different stops along our route today. So stop one is going to be the personal story, all of the early days Andrew stories of the experiences that brought you to where you are today. Stop 2 is going to be the professional story. We'll talk about the stint in finance. We'll talk about Imaginary Ventures, how you guys invest, where you invest, what you look for. Stop 3 is a game we call the Hot Box, a tongue-in-cheek version of the Hot Seat, this or that style question game. And then stop 4 will be the outro, the last stop on our route, and we'll get you on your way. Ready to rock?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, Andrew, first, I think let's go personal story. Stop 1 all the way back to the beginning. Who is Andrew? Where are you from? What's the family life like? And then let's get into college, and then we'll get there after.
Ideally, am I supposed to connect this to who I am today, or am I
Just go for it.
All right, I was born in Lenox Hill Hospital, New York City. Child of New Yorkers. My mom's from Queens, my dad's from Brooklyn. I have 2 younger sisters. Really epic, loving family. We moved from New York City to New Jersey when I was 8, and then I had a pretty normal suburban childhood. Operated some pretty epic lemonade stands over the summer.
Hell yeah.
It's like kind of a fake entrepreneurial plug. Went to high school at West Essex High School in North Caldwell, New Jersey, a relatively not that noteworthy town except they filmed The Sopranos there.
All right, we'll take that.
And then I went to college at Penn. Majored in political science, thought I was going to be a lawyer and then the president of the United States, and then got smacked by a heavy dose of reality.
There's still time. There's still time.
Yeah, there's probably some stuff on the internet that DQs me at this point.
Including this podcast.
Yeah, this might be the thing that actually puts me over the edge. So,
tell me about parents. Are they, you obviously are deep in the investing and consumer world these days. Were there any clear influences from parents or otherwise in the early days that set you towards that path?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah, my dad's in wealth management, has one pair of jeans with a bunch of holes in it. The most, not anti-materialist, but for sure non-materialistic, but a really epic dude. And my mom was actually in ad sales.
Hey,
so
shout out.
Maybe that's part of my affinity for what you guys do. No, I don't think anything about my upbringing or family pushed me toward consumer, other than that I love walking around stores and buying things. Maybe that's going to be the through line here. So, really fortunate upbringing, but nothing, my mom didn't found a beauty retailer or anything like that. I kind of found my way here solo.
Yeah. And so let's talk about Penn. Did you go to business school? What were you studying at Penn?
I studied politics. I really thought the law was my calling, and I read a lot of books that were first published between like 1600 and 1800, and I really loved that, by the way. And then I had like a really chance encounter on a golf course, and I met a guy who offered me a summer internship at an investment bank, and I was like, cool, I'll do this. And the roads diverged, and that's where I went.
Yeah. And was that the internship years?
So, kind of fascinating. I won't take you all the way down the rabbit hole, but the bank was called MF Global, and I worked there summer after my sophomore year. This is summer of 2011. And then the next winter, the bank like really famously and spectacularly collapsed. This was like right around the European sovereign debt crisis, and they were taking really big positions in European sovereign debt. There ended up being like a massive run on the bank, and the bank ended up going out of business. And then I came back to school to recruit for internships for the next year, and kind of sad, but like a really amazing thing to be able to talk about in interviews. So maybe in some really perverse way, I had a leg up in subsequent interviews because of that experience. But
they didn't blame you for the
I
collapsing.
didn't have my finger on the.
You didn't think the history guy would have some background. So, all right. So you had
That would be a good clip.
you had the intern experience. It famously had a little bit of a bump in the road there. But so did you end up staying in finance? Where did you go from there?
So, the first like 4 years of my career, I spent as a bond trader at Goldman.
Okay. In New York.
Yeah, in New York. After I kind of like got past the whole law thing, I actually was like deeply under the impression that was my dream job. I kind of associated it with the poker my friends and I used to play in high school and college, and I thought I could just do that with other people's money and way higher stakes. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And in many ways, it was the coolest thing ever.
Right.
We were trading really big positions, taking a lot of risk. It was really fast, very pressurized. Every day from start to finish was like, you're on. The phones start ringing at 6:45 and they stop ringing at 4:45. I don't know. After a few years, I realized that it wasn't the calling. So I really loved the time. I learned a ton of really amazing stuff, but my heart wasn't there.
Yeah. What do you think it was missing? As you look back on that?
This is going to sound like really critical and possibly negative, but I just wasn't that emotionally into the conversations.
Okay.
I think like every career has like a fundamental set of conversations that occur on a daily basis, and discussing the bond market all day and then going to dinner with clients and talking about the bond market, and I just couldn't really compel myself to feel it.
Yeah.
How's the cop situation? Pretty cool. So I took a big deep breath and tried to figure out what I loved about that job that I thought maybe I could port over to a new career, and what I felt like I was missing. And we can talk about why or not, but I found that early stage investing in consumer businesses felt like the best combination of really fascinating intellectual and emotional and conceptual conversation topics. But it's an investing business. It's very similar to a trading business in that it definitionally requires risk taking.
Right. Sure.
And putting your money where your mouth is and not being afraid to get conviction and stand behind that conviction and advocate for a decision, even in the face of some disagreement. So I like the combination of maintaining the pressure and risk profile of the trading business.
Right.
I just love these companies.
Yeah.
I just love the stuff they make and the way they sell it to customers and the way they manifest and interact. This is amazing. I didn't think I would get arrested for doing it. So I feel
Can
really
I stop
lucky
you
and
there?
happy. Yeah.
At Goldman, so obviously it's like a huge brand name. Do you think that had anything to do with the allure of taking that job?
If there was anywhere to do that job, Goldman was the place.
Okay.
It's like a side comment, but I remember we're all set up with Bloombergs and we're communicating with 1,000 clients, 1,000 client accounts on Bloomberg. And I remember early on sending my thoughts out, and it says Andrew Maxman, Goldman Sachs and Company.
Yeah.
And people were really responsive to my ideas, and I just remember thinking why do these people hold my opinions in such high regard when I'm so new at this? And
Right.
it very quickly introduced me to I promise I'm not doing this intentionally, the value of brand and what brand can do for you.
Interesting.
I didn't intend to take it in that direction. That's just really fortunate that it worked out that way. But the people there are amazing. The training there is amazing. This is awesome. So yeah, brother. By the way, I got a haircut.
I actually had a hard stop. So on that track, another question that I have is, how are the hours at Goldman?
We started early. When I first started there and I was the most junior person on the desk, I was getting there at 6:15.
Okay.
and working really hard until like 6 or 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
And that's fine, dude. When you're 21 or 22, like you have stamina and enthusiasm, and like you're learning a ton of stuff, and I don't know, that's part of it.
Sure.
I thought I had no issue spending a lot of time there.
Yeah, and you know that when you sign up
Yeah,
for
you
it.
feel lucky.
Yeah, it's interesting that, so going back to the brand thing, I mean, Goldman has branded themselves well, and probably that's sure that it's part of the allure. It's also hilarious that your dad's a wealth manager, and you're just like, I don't know if you're high frequency trading bonds deals like left and right, but that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. You kept the risk profile, but you completely switched the paradigm from a speed perspective, and you ended up in a role that does not reward the short termism, and not to say that the trading did or didn't, but there was probably like a more near-term mindset, and then it flipped the script to being extremely long form. How did you think about making that decision? As you kept some components, but some have drastically switched to the other side of the pendulum.
That's a really good question. That wasn't necessarily the thing I was optimizing for, although you're spot on. Like at Goldman, we had a P&L sent around at the end of every single day, and it had everyone's daily P&L, week-to-date P&L, monthly, quarterly, year-to-date. There was a number, you had your name, it was your row, the aggregate was the entire desk, and it was sent around to the entire group. It was very public and immediate.
Right.
It's the feedback cycle that's the most different. You don't get a lot of feedback in venture. You make an investment and have a really good quarter, and you're like, okay, this is incredible, and then have a really bad quarter, like, fuck, like, how dumb was I?
Right.
In many cases, you have to wait 3 or 5 or 7 or 10 years for the actual feedback of the only question that actually matters in investing, which is, does this investment return cash?
Right.
So it's a little bit intimidating to start a career and know that you might not know if you're really good at it for a half decade or more.
Right.
The flip side of that is, you see like market shocks happen, and I feel really lucky not to have to mark a book to market on a daily basis. Like when the whole tariff thing went down in April, all the hedge funds are marking their stuff down daily, and we could like step back and take a deep breath and ask ourselves what matters and which companies are impacted and what do we need to do to help them, and what information do we need to know for ourselves or for our LPs, and so that you can definitely breathe more deeply.
Right.
You just have to wait a lot longer for the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one paradigm that's held throughout both of the experiences, we'll talk about Imagine in a second, is risk. You don't seem like are you a risky guy? Like, where did the tolerance or appetite for undertaking risk in major ways
Oh, I probably need
come
a therapist for this one.
Put your feet up.
I'll give my best shot in answering this question. I think I've always viewed things very much in black and white.
Sure.
Ethical questions, intellectual questions, I don't know, the pursuit of the truth, like you get an idea and either you believe it's right or you go try to find a new one that is right or more right. And then when you have that, when you have what you believe to be the truth in your hand, either you stand behind it or you are soft or skeptical or tentative, and then you should probably go out and reevaluate it. But you can't be afraid to put your money where your mouth is, and if you believe you're right, if you've done the work and spent the time thinking about something, then you should really stand behind it. And that doesn't mean that you should stand behind it until the end of the road, because if new information arrives in the picture, then it's equally okay to say, I was wrong. I actually have disarmed a lot of people by like totally giving in on a position that I was really firm in either advocating for or defending, when maybe they made a point that caused me to reevaluate. I'm like, okay, actually, you're probably right here. And I think people don't expect that.
Right.
Because it's, now we're really getting into like psychology. It's ego that gets in the way of people advocating for the truth or admitting when they haven't found it. So I don't know, if it's the truth you care about, then your ego should allow you to admit when you are holding out something that isn't that.
I think that's one of the most interesting parts of venture, and why I don't know if I would be good at it, that when, coming from experience, when we're raising, you get on a call or multiple calls with one person who is, you can tell, you can read them that they're excited and they believe in this, and then they take it back to the team and 99% of the time come back and say, yeah, we're passing.
Dude, I can't imagine it. I mean, I really sympathize maybe too
But like,
much.
do you feel that way? Because I do feel like you get excited about deals and then you have to take it back, and kind of to your point, you have to be willing to have conviction, but then have trust in your other partners to then say, okay, you're right, I misread that.
I think it comes up really often. I mean, one thing I say to founders often is, for example, at Imaginary, we will make 20 investments in a fund cycle over 2.5 years. It's like sub 10 investments a year. We're talking like really sporadically deploying capital. The bar is so exceptionally high. You have to, if there were a rubric, it's like checking 100 out of 100 boxes.
Right.
And sometimes we meet a company that checks, I'm rounding here, 95 out of 100, and we pass on that.
Right.
And to the person on the other side, a pass is a pass. A pass implies a no, implies a lack of excitement, implies disbelief.
Right.
But it's very possible to have a really high degree of conviction in a business, but think maybe the terms of the investment aren't perfect, maybe the stage of this business isn't the right fit, maybe there's one last question that we couldn't get over the hump on, and for that reason, it's 100 times easier to say no in venture than in yes, and so I often try to communicate that not all no's are equal in venture, and some no's really come with a side of immense support and belief, even if in the context of the firm and the fund it didn't get across the line.
Yeah. I also think like admirable people who don't change decision making when new information becomes available are probably the most dangerous people in the industry. I have a question for you before we get too close to Imaginary.
Yeah.
History, you said political science or history major?
Political science.
Political science. So that is heavily recruited by finance. And it wasn't always the case. It used to be very heavy, we want finance, we want math, we want statistics, maybe we want some engineering. And yet history majors tend to do very well in the field.
I didn't know this.
It's definitely true.
So cool.
So what do you think the history background has helped you anyway, whether it be at Goldman or now at Imaginary?
If I could go back, I wouldn't major in political science again. I think I would do something more practical. Maybe that means more quantitative. Maybe that just means more, like, to me, psychology is probably more practical than political science. Spanish might be more practical than political science. I don't know. I think reading enduring texts and enduring philosophy is really valuable, probably what it does to a quite malleable brain. I don't know, do I attribute like anything that's happened in my life to me having read like Locke? I don't know, probably not. Don't even ask me what was in that book. So I that's fascinating, and I do think, by the way, especially today, I feel it's probably even more so about like the Gen Z, Gen Alpha cohort. I do think you can distinguish yourself from your peers with exceptional communication, with like exceptional reasoning abilities and exceptional ability to articulate yourself, which, I don't know, when you have to read thousands of pages a semester and write dozens, if not into the hundreds, you probably cultivate that in a way that maybe the STEM majors don't get. I'm stretching a little bit, but
I think that's valuable.
I put a super high degree of value on communication skills.
Yeah. All right, so we're moving beyond Goldman. Why do you leave Goldman, and what comes after Goldman?
Yeah, I mean, I had this realization that I had an awesome few years but didn't want to do it for a few decades.
Right.
And I definitely took my sweet, sweet time trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I kind of got in my head that early-ish stage consumer investing, as I said, kind of fit a lot of the things I was looking for. And I like came up for a breath to try to figure out how to get there, and this might come as no shock, like there aren't many direct routes from bond trading to consumer venture.
Right.
So it's like, all right, what does anyone else do? I went to grad school, I got an MBA. I say that a little sheepishly, I don't really advertise that.
Where'd you go?
I went to Columbia.
Okay.
The idea for me was like, let me just be in New York. Columbia's a spot to go, so I'll just be here. It's where the action is, it's where my life is. And then while I was there, basically immediately I was like, let me get the experience I need. So I started working at a podcast content and tech startup called Luminary, which had raised a lot of money and launched that year. And then in the second year, worked at a fund called 14W, which we can get there, but led to my being hired at Imaginary. So I left because I really knew in my heart that I didn't want to do that job for 30 years.
Sure.
And I saw people around me who were obsessed, and I knew that obsession leads to greatness in a way that you can't manufacture without that obsession.
So true.
And I knew I couldn't compete with that.
Right.
So I gave it up.
Yeah.
Even though it was fun and the lifestyle was great and I loved the people I worked with, I can't hang on to that forever.
Yeah, I felt that way about software. Like my background was writing code, and I was like, damn, this is really cool. I'm like making stuff, and I've never really like made stuff that's physical and it's super rewarding. But I was looking around and being like, the people who are good at this stuff, like, it's rewarding locking themselves in for like 18 hours a day, head down. It's like, I will never jump to the top quartile, and there's just like not a future state.
I think that's a really important thing. You got to find something that you're excited to do.
Totally.
And that sounds maybe lofty and
Totally.
Scott Galloway would probably say, like, come on. If that's attainable, I think it's extremely valuable.
Yeah. All right, so let's start to transition to Imaginary. You said you, the fund you were at previously led you to Imaginary, so let's dive into that a little bit.
My second year of grad school, I worked at a fund called 14W, and my partner at Imaginary, Nick Brown, was previously a partner at 14W.
Okay.
They knew that Nick and Natalie were hiring for a new member of the investment team at Imaginary Fund 2, and they introduced me, and that's the luck that it takes.
Yeah.
So like just immensely good luck. I mean, I joke, like I interned at Luminary, 14W were on the board, I met Alex, I worked at 14W, I met Nick, I joined Imaginary. Like it sounds so neat
Right.
retrospectively, but like I had no idea what I was doing. I was
Totally.
just following luck and opportunity and interest,
Yeah.
and somehow it like gets you where you're going, and then you turn around and look back and oh, like that seems super neatly packaged, but in the moment it's
100%.
totally
Oh,
random.
I kind of hate all the like thought leaders that look back like, oh, these experiences, there's a clear line through it. When in reality, when you're in each of those moments, you have no idea what's going on. It's all circuitous and random.
Dude, I hear a lot like people, give their introduction and they talk about this like epiphany they had as a 19-year-old, or this like thing that was inculcated in them by their parents when they were like 7. Like, I knew I was gonna do early stage fintech investing from the time I was 6 when I, and I'm like, dude, like you don't have to manufacture that thing. You could just say like, I thought this job seemed super cool and I followed my interest to it, and then it turned out to be super cool, and here I like I think that's totally okay, but I think people.
Well, the same is
now
true in
pontificate.
startups. Like, we didn't start this business. We started with something else, and then you have to pivot, and then you find your way. And like, sure, looking back, you can say everything happened for a reason, but
It's like
we
life.
tried a bunch of
Yeah,
shit,
you don't
and then
script the
you
whole
figure
thing.
out what sticks.
All you can do is make the best decision in the moment and maybe
Yeah.
try to set yourself up for the right outcome. And
Yeah.
then you roll the dice. Then
Totally.
it goes. One of
Yeah, I think half is just putting yourselves out there and allowing those things, the good things to happen.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you just don't get those at bats. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about Imaginary Ventures. So you joined around Fund 2, is that right?
Yeah, I joined right in COVID, right in the first half of 2020.
Okay. And then for those who
That
are
was
not
Fund 2.
familiar, what is Imaginary Ventures?
Many things maybe, but primarily consumer brand investors across stages. So we invest in highly emotionally resonant brands across, all the consumer categories that you guys know and work with: beauty, apparel, food, beverage, pet, lifestyle, four-wall restaurants, from idea to deep growth. So we've made investments in businesses that were deeply pre-launch. We made investments in businesses that do several $100 million in revenue and are quasi pre-IPO. The goal is to identify greatness and exceptional brands that consumers have a deep amount of love for, and you can identify that at various stages, and we luckily have a fund construct that's set up to allow us to make investments across those stages. We do some other things. We help put businesses together. We worked really closely with the team to put Vero together. Another business called Point of View Beauty that we did with TikTok influencer named Michaela Noguera. So the firm is evolving. We were founded in late 2017, so we're coming up on a decade, and the form changes shapes. But fundamentally, we invest in hopefully really amazing, enduring brands.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about the partners that founded Imaginary. Were there clear ties to consumer? What was like to the extent that you're able to speak to it, the partners' origin story in Imaginary Ventures, how it all came together early days?
Yeah, I mean, I think Imaginary today is very much a reflection and manifestation and outgrowth of the partners. So the founders of Imaginary are Natalie Massenet and Nick Brown. Natalie Massenet was the founder of Net-a-Porter.
Okay.
She got the idea to sell luxury handbags and apparel on the internet in 1999. Very much a creative, visionary, highly risk-tolerant entrepreneur with with a merchant side. Net-a-Porter was successful for many reasons, one of which was Natalie's incredible ability to pick great brands,
Right.
which informs the picking of great brands that we do to this day. And then Nick was a partner at 14W, where from a very young age was an investor kind of in the early DTC boom.
Sure.
This kind of like content to commerce, Facebook coming online, Instagram coming online as really attractive acquisition channels,
Right.
and made some, incredible investments in kind of those 5 years. Some of those businesses are public today.
Right.
It's a really nice compliment. Natalie, the entrepreneur, Nick, the investor. Both of them are really beloved, which I don't want to overlook. I think being loved by your community is really valuable, whether you're a founder of a brand or an
Right.
advertising business or an investment firm. I think when people are rooting for you, it's really useful.
Takes a village.
Yeah, and here we are years later, well past $1 billion in AUM, and I don't know, maybe we've arrived, maybe we can say that. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So how long ago did you get to Imaginary?
I mean, it's kind of funny. I met the team at Imaginary in February of 2020. They might not like that I tell this. Kelly won't like that I tell this story. I met Kelly in the Imaginary office in February of 2020. We get into the conference room and she did a little cough and she said, "Don't worry, it's not COVID." And I joke this was the time when everyone was still going about their normal daily lives, but you couldn't find hand sanitizer anywhere.
Right.
Right at that
Yeah.
cusp. And then a week later, everyone fled New York City, and it was really hard to get in touch with them. And I was kind of done with the process. We were kind of there,
Right.
and I could hardly get their attention. This is a bummer.
Ugh.
And by the way, it turns out that I was hyper fixated on this thing, but they had a firm to manage and a portfolio of
Right.
companies that they didn't know what was going to happen to, and so they were obviously prioritizing the important stuff, not this person they were thinking about hiring. But it worked out, and I joined a couple of months later in earnest.
Got it.
Yeah.
So 2 years each, 2 funds. You've essentially been there for about 4 years.
Yeah, I think I've been there basically 5 years now.
Okay.
We were right at the beginning of deploying Fund 2 in summer of 2020. Then we raised Fund 3. End of 21, we started deploying that. Beginning of 22 was a really kind of fascinating time to be deploying capital. A lucky time to be fortunate time to be raising.
In 21, yeah.
Different time to be deploying.
Sure.
That fund has taken a little longer than I think our typical deployment period, because we were 4 to 6 months in the beginning of 2022 where things were really hot
Yeah.
still, and then everything kind of took a big pause, and we got really reticent to deploy while we just kind of figured out what was going on, and things reset and businesses kind of reimagined their P&Ls. So probably the right pacing for a 2022 vintage fund.
Right.
So yeah, basically at
Yeah.
5.
So one thing that I think that's probably been interesting that all of us have had a front row seat to, since you've come on as a formal consumer investor, I think we have seen a reversion to the mean insofar as D2C had a crazy moment in time. And I do feel the pendulum has swung back a little bit to this omni-channel strategy that feels more sustainable. I want to talk about that D2C moment and what it felt like from the investor side. And again, it's one of those things where new information comes available, we need to change decision making as new information comes available. Do you remember that moment in time when that everyone, it wasn't the whole market had conviction that this was
People
the
definitely
path.
started referring to consumer as D2C.
Right.
There was a
Right.
swap in terminology, which was not the right swap, but I for sure remember that. I'll credit Nick and Natalie for this. Even in the throes of COVID, we were advocating for our brands to exist on the channel, reminding brands in our portfolio, outside of our portfolio, that the best brands exist in a truly omnichannel fashion, because the customer consumes in an omnichannel fashion.
Right.
And this is not the same exact thing, but for sure related. Performance acquisition is an opiate, and it's not indicative of the kind of love that I think the best brands cultivate among their consumers. The best brands spend a really relatively small amount of marketing on performance.
Right.
And think about things like out of home and other brand marketing or in real life activations. They engage the customer much more richly and in a much more multifaceted, maybe multi-sensory way than like flat performance or pay-per-click,
Right.
like
Drop
holy
ship.
bought a suite. Yeah, like anyone can buy a customer for a price, but not everyone can cause people to fall in love with their brand or product or service. Like that's the mark of a great brand. So maybe I'm a little off topic of DTC, but the other thing about DTC is there's a ceiling on it.
Right.
It's not coincidental that brands scale DTC and then like sales start slowing and they look to go omnichannel. It's because they kind of hit their ceiling of how many customers you can acquire in a given month who want to buy you name the product, I won't, but there's sort of a natural ceiling on direct and you have to supplement it with wholesale or own retail because that's where most of the dollars still are.
Yeah.
So for sure the best brands are everywhere, and you see that. I would say that is categorically.
Yeah. And so do you think Imaginary, obviously they've been so successful and I think are looked at so favorably by the industry, and obviously the market continues to fund them for that reason, but do you think there was ever a moment in time where they felt influence or felt the pressure to move in a direction in the same way that, like, you look at AI right now, you look at where people are deploying in those investments,
Yeah.
it's not crazy to think, there's conviction, and I think there's good points on both sides in the way that there probably was at that moment in time. Do you remember that moment in time in those discussions at all?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. We, in Fund 2, started investing more heavily. It still wasn't our core kind of mandate in software, specifically at like the e-commerce software,
Sure.
retail technology kind of sphere where we felt we actually had a really interesting angle in diligence and decision making and access because we have this portfolio and broader network of brands that are theoretically some of the sharpest e-commerce and other retail operators for making decisions on marketing software and logistics and operations software and among other things. And the market was really encouraging investment in that category.
Right.
Brands were raising really kind of frothy rounds at really high prices and growing very fast, by the way, and e-com was booming post-COVID, so brands had a lot of capital to experiment, and so there was just like a lot of growth in these businesses. And we were on Fund 2, still a startup, what's considered an emerging manager in the kind of LP community, and so we were also figuring out who we were and what the right allocation strategy is, brands and other kind of enabling software. So we've pulled that back a little bit.
Sure.
I think we figured out what our true sphere of competence or excellence is, and then figured out how to maybe be a little more deliberate or specific around the edges and still make investments, and some really good ones in those businesses, but maybe not with the fervor that was like the natural approach in late 21 and early 22.
Yeah.
Right.
I think every asset manager has to take a few years, maybe even a few funds, to figure out exactly who they are and what their business model is, fund size and stage and allocation across different categories. I do think that's a very natural part of growing up as a manager.
Right.
But that's one example where we felt some influence from the market and then asked ourselves honestly, like the introspective exercise of what is optimal for Imaginary.
Right.
And it looked a little different than it did in that probably year and a half.
Yeah.
You talked about how sky high valuations were and how easy capital was to raise in late 21 and early 22, and then you also mentioned how that kind of all came crashing down in, let's say, 23. Where do we stand today? What's the market look like for consumer investing?
It's much pickier. I've said for a long time, like, capital is available for great businesses. I think that comment holds true in any part of the market cycle.
Sure.
It's really like the B tier and below that gets pinched the most. I think there was, this maybe sounds not nice, but a lot of mediocrity got funded in late 2021, early 22, by investors who were, I'll call it, less demanding. So, there's a much higher emphasis today on profitability. That's not a novel comment. You'll probably hear that a lot.
Consumer, I think that in VC and private equity have never felt closer, at least as someone
Yes.
who's had a limited exposure to it.
which by the way has made investing on margin slightly more challenging in that the
Right.
most profitable businesses don't need your capital.
Correct. Yeah.
And so the deal dynamics have changed. There are a lot more rounds that are secondary in nature, where it's
Right.
maybe founders taking some money off the table. It makes getting into great businesses harder on the margin because you're trying to convince or encourage them to take money that they don't intrinsically need.
Right.
So that's been really a fascinating adjustment from the like kind of really high spend, low profit quarters of like 2021, early 22. So I would say the market like kind of dug its feet in a little bit on sustainability, economic sustainability, profitability, and businesses, operators I think also made those adjustments and therefore are in better leverage positions
Right.
when they go out to
Right.
raise. So I don't know, the footing has adjusted, but probably slightly equally.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about consumer specifically. So, of all the places people can deploy capital, and obviously we work with consumer brands all day, every day, I personally think it is the hardest category to be successful in. And the reason I say that is, one, the barriers to entry have, the walls or the challenges have come down such that new entrants can enter. And the people who hold the keys to distribution over time, and they're sitting on all the first party data, have the option to white label the product. And so there's, and then the acquirers, or the places aside from private equity, which is a big liquidity path, there's a finite number of them. And so I've long had this belief that consumer is like playing life on hard mode. And then you add in the multiples and the exits, which I think, all of that said, makes Imaginary as an organization all the more impressive, because I think it's the hardest category to be successful in. What are your reactions or thoughts? Do you have a different take, or do you think it is playing life on hard mode?
The only thing I heard you say that I think is unique to consumer is the average scale at exit. All the other stuff about distribution, I can probably make an analogy to like monopolistic tendencies among big tech, talking about like
Fair.
white labeling product. Look at what AI is doing to big companies' abilities to build products in-house, so it reduces their dependencies on third-party software providers. I hear all the time, like, consumer is so hard, how do you know? And you could flip that, like, software is so hard, how do you know? Like, how do you know what product is gonna matter? How do you know it won't be supplanted in 2 years by something? I think every category has its own idiosyncrasies and its own, like, inherent challenges, and you spend enough time thinking about something, and the question for us is, how do we identify excellence? And I don't know, you spend enough years trying to figure out what capital excellence is in your category, and you develop a taste. The same way you can in fintech or healthcare or vertical software. So I would push back a little bit. I agree on the slight challenge versus software investing, that the exits you can underwrite to are just smaller.
Sure.
And so I think there's an impact on maximum fund size for consumer venture firms. I think the model probably breaks at smaller total fund sizes than software does. I think entry valuation is probably more important in consumer than it is in software.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I think is most top of mind for us, which is to say, we're in the venture capital asset class. The thing we're trying to do is make investments in businesses that can return our fund, and you can run the math back of the envelope at a certain point that your assumptions on exit size become out of the realm of what's feasible.
Right.
That just happens earlier than in software. Everything else about picking and category-specific challenges, I think we could sit down and make a like-for-like list. So I don't know if consumer is, by the way, consumer is a much bigger part of GDP than any of the other categories that
Totally.
get venture attention. So, we try to remind the market of that all the time. Look at how many massive global, international, even domestic consumer brands there are. So it's not that the opportunity set's not out there. The only thing I think I would give you I agree is scale at exit.
Yeah, you mentioned that your job is to identify excellence, and I think you said you've kind of developed a criteria of how to identify that. How do you think about the various aspects of a potential investment? There's obviously team, revenue, product, and then one thing that I didn't really think about is are you judging the potential team culture and how these people might work together. When I hear about team, I hear about the accolades of individuals, and I don't think that I hear about, they got along really well. Like you could see team chemistry, and so that was kind of a sidebar. But just how do you think about that? Is there anything that you prioritize? Is there anything that is a deal breaker if that isn't there?
I mean, you guys run a company.
Yeah.
Do you guys think about it? Do you guys think about how happy your employees are to be there, how they work with each other, whether they find meaning in the work they do, whether they're friendly with them? I mean,
Sure.
like, I would just flip it a little bit, not to deflect. Like, do you guys think about it? And if you have been monitoring it, like, can you correlate performance locally
Sure.
with moments of like really kind of positive team culture?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we think about it a lot. And I'd say we've also had exposure to brands that haven't worked. And I think when it's very easy to draw the through line as to why it didn't work. I don't think it's always and sometimes it is the product or the timing, but sometimes it's just, are these people working together and can they go the distance? And I think that's like mediation and error resolution and like, can they handle this conflict over time? What's your perspective?
No, I totally agree. I mean, the worst times that our company performed was when there were, a couple bad actors that we had in our as employees that were definitely toxic, and so it just made going to work not fun. You could tell that no one was having fun being there. I guess I was asking, so I'm not trying to ask the question of
But yeah, by the way, like
culture's
the
important.
word company is the etymological cousin of the word companion.
Right.
Like, a company is a group of people.
Right.
There is no other thing.
Right.
If you get rid of all the people, the company doesn't exist.
Right.
So, I mean, you sit in boardrooms and you can identify really high-performing teams and less high-performing teams. You can identify teams that are really excited to be together and maybe view it as a professional obligation, Monday to Friday, this hour to this hour.
Right.
It is all the people.
Yeah.
That's all it actually is.
Right.
Yeah. I think what's going to be a pretty interesting question. So you raise a fund, your mandate is to deploy that capital. That fund has a period in which you're trying to deploy the capital by. And I think going back to some of our earlier conversations, there's macro trends and then there's fads. I guess my question is really around the structure of venture investing and fund configuration and these timelines. How do you kind of think about what's a fad and what is a trend while marrying the component that you need to deploy the capital and you have a mandate to deploy the capital and put it to work, when everything could in that moment, in that time you deploy capital, inherently be a fad? And it's kind of challenging because it's like a zoom out question almost, because things don't happen in the span of years, especially in venture investing. They happen in the span of over decades. And I guess it probably could parallel back to what Max was asking about investment criteria. How do you kind of keep your head on straight when you will always be thrown into fads that may or may not turn into macro trends?
It's the right question. We think about it all the time. I would say, like, just to set like the base rates, people will always wear clothing. They'll most likely always want to look good, and so women will most likely always really care about skincare and makeup. They're two of the most emotional categories. People are always going to eat. They're always going to drink. So, like, fundamentally, we're not afraid that like the floor is going to come out from below us. But then we have, like, for example, right now we're asking ourselves, is matcha going to stick around?
Right.
Okay, like matcha went from being a niche Eastern product to a local wellness product, local the wrong word, to a wellness product that really resonates in the United States, to a culture product. You have a lot of people walking around with their iced matcha lattes, and it's become sort of like a status product,
symbol.
like Starbucks probably was in the early days. And the question is, how much share can that take from coffee? Is matcha a category worth investing in? It's not big enough for capital V venture today.
Right.
People are spending their days in saunas and cold plunges today. Will that persist? Will it not? Is this obsession temperate? I don't know. I'm not giving you the answers. That's the job.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the job. That's all the work we do. Everyone we talk to, it all has to lead to our conviction and decision of yes or no, among other things. But we spend a lot of time sitting around a big table as a full team, asking ourselves these questions, and everyone weighing in from a variety of angles, trying to come to some consensus about the longevity of something that's hot today and making a decision on whether it will be hot in 10 or 15 years, because that's really what we're after.
Right.
And maybe this is sad, but I don't know the answer. And we don't necessarily get the answers for 10 or 15
Right,
years,
yeah.
or 2 or 3. You kind of know earlier if it's a no than if it's yes.
Yeah.
So that's half the game, I think.
Yeah. No, it's a great answer. The last question for me, to what extent are you relying on internal team knowledge versus external? Because you guys know what you know, you're obviously well networked. I'm always curious how much of these things are an internal discussion and how much weight's being given to internal perspectives versus to what degree you're reaching from outside but within the ecosystem for thought leaders, experts, advice, perspectives.
This is on like decision making.
Yeah.
Substantial majority internal.
Internal.
Vast majority internal. By the way, if I said any other answer than that, then we wouldn't be a worthy investment for our
Right.
LPs.
Absolutely.
We supplement our decision making internally with a variety of external data sources and expert networks. Those are to inform our decision making, not to replace it. And as we've kind of discussed, there's a big taste element in consumer. There's a big, you got to be out in the world seeing, like, where is the line in Soho today?
Right.
What are people talking about on TikTok? We really stay in it. We don't have all the answers, and we try to be really honest when we don't think we're all the way. But the external data and information and perspective is to get us there. You know, like if we make an investment in a food or beverage CPG brand, we got to talk to buyers at retail
Right.
because they're maybe one turn closer to the consumer's decision. So yeah, we want to access the highest quality data, but most of it is our team sitting around the table in that room, trying to get ourselves as close to the truth as we can with largely what we have kind of built up as individuals and as a team.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we don't ignore the wealth of information that's available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Andrew, stop number 3 on our route today is the hot box. Take a sip. You're gonna need it. Cool down.
Okay.
All right, hot box. Ready to go?
Let's do it.
Give up email or give up Slack?
I'll give up Slack. I live in email.
Cold plunge or hot tub?
Hot tubs are way too hot. Hot tubs are uncomfortably hot. They're too hot. Cold
Sweet snacks or salty snacks?
Salty. Salty.
Sampling in-store or influencer unboxing?
Is this what I want to?
You know, you just gotta pick, man. You don't get to strip line them.
I find in-store sampling awkward personally, and so I'm cool with an influencer unboxing.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Canva,
Energy drinks, brother.
No, wasn't the
Coffee,
question.
for sure. Coffee.
Canva or Figma?
Neither are relevant to my day-to-day.
Winter or summer?
Summer, man. The winter's too cold. Anyone who says they love the seasons is lying.
Protein or fiber?
That's hard. That's hard. Protein is temporary. Fibers if you want to live forever. I guess I'll pick protein.
Telepathy or teleportation?
Shit. Telepathy sounds really awesome. I'll go with that one.
Neat or messy?
I'm so neat. Yeah.
DTC or D2C?
Oh, it's a T. Capital T.
Thank you.
Yeah.
$50 in roulette, red or black?
Oh, who cares? Black.
In-house or outsourced?
In-house. If you want it done right, do it yourself.
I love
Board
it.
games or video games?
Board games. I suck at video games.
Spotify podcast or Substack deep dive?
If I'm using Spotify, it's to listen to music. So, Substack for sure.
Beach house or ski house?
Beach house. It's all about the beach.
Work remote or return to office?
Office. The best work is done with the team.
How are you going to do that at the beach house? Go ahead.
They're all invited.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise, the morning, man. It's the youth of the day.
Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or TikTok?
I spend the most time on Instagram. I have the most fun on TikTok. LinkedIn stinks. Twitter, one day I'll get good at it, but I haven't figured it out.
So Instagram.
Instagram.
Thanks
Sorry,
for
yeah.
review. Pineapple pizza or candy corn?
I think candy corn's pretty good. And pineapple pizza is unfathomable.
Live music or DJ?
Live music.
Go again.
Advertisement or advertisement?
Dude, that's so cool. Advertising.
Call, text, or audio notes?
Dude, the unscheduled phone call is a lost art. Phone call.
Give up bread for life or cheese for life?
cheese, I think, pretty easily.
Are you doing air guitar or air drums?
I actually play the guitar, but air drums for sure. Air guitar is for children.
Start early or leave late?
Start early. Getting stuff done in the darkness is hard for me.
Trucks or billboards?
I have to say trucks, don't I?
Yes.
Dude, I love billboards. I love out of home, but trucks are cool, man.
Receive good news first or bad news first?
What's the bad news?
The bad news is we've arrived at our final stop of the show, Andrew. You were a great guest. Thanks so much for coming on.
Man.
Wanted to wrap up here. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find you? Where can they learn more about Imaginary?
Imaginary is actually not that easy to learn more about, but I'll happily tell people about it. But search my name on the internet and see what pops up, and I'm pretty available.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.